"Stop the music. Now." The command echoed across Madison Square Garden with an authority that froze every member of Michael Jackson's crew mid-performance. In the middle of his most iconic song, the king of pop had just done something that had never happened in his entire career. He stopped performing because of what he saw in the third row. What happened next between Michael Jackson and a grieving mother would become the most emotionally powerful moment ever captured on a concert stage. But nobody in that New York arena was prepared for the wave of compassion that was about to sweep through 20,000 hearts. It was November 14th, 1988, and Michael Jackson was in the middle of his Bad World Tour's North American leg. The anticipation had been building for months. This wasn't just any concert. This was Michael's triumphant return to Madison Square Garden, a venue that held special significance in his career, where he'd performed some of his most legendary shows with the Jackson 5, and later as a solo artist. The 20,000 fans packed into every seat of New York's most iconic arena were witnessing what many considered the performance of a lifetime. The energy was electric. Michael was in perfect form, his voice crystalline, his dance moves impossibly precise, and everything was flowing with that magical quality that separated his shows from everyone else's. But in the third row, section 102, seat 14, something was happening that would change the entire trajectory of that evening. Sarah Mitchell sat motionless, while everyone around her danced and sang along to The Way You Make Me Feel. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, her eyes fixed on Michael but seeing something else entirely. While thousands of voices joined together in celebration, Sarah was fighting back tears for reasons nobody around her could possibly understand. She hadn't planned to come to this concert. In fact, she had tried to give her tickets away. The tickets had been purchased 6 months earlier, a birthday surprise for her daughter Emma's 16th birthday. Emma had been obsessed with Michael Jackson since she was 8 years old. Her room was covered with posters. She knew every word to every song. She'd watched the Thriller video so many times that the VHS tape had worn thin. But Emma wouldn't be celebrating her 16th birthday. 3 weeks earlier, on October 23rd, Emma had been killed by a drunk driver while walking home from school. She died instantly, the police said, trying to offer some small comfort. She didn't suffer, but Sarah was suffering enough for both of them. The concert tickets had arrived in the mail 2 days after Emma's funeral, a cruel reminder of the future that had been stolen. Sarah's husband David had wanted to throw them away, but Sarah couldn't bring herself to do it. These tickets represented the last gift they would have given their daughter. Throwing them away felt like erasing Emma entirely. So Sarah had come alone, sitting in Emma's seat, hoping somehow to feel close to her daughter one more time. David had thought she was crazy. Their friends had worried about her mental state. The grief counselor had suggested it might be too painful. But Sarah needed to do this. She needed to sit where Emma would have sat, to hear the music Emma would have heard, to somehow keep that connection alive. As the concert progressed, Sarah found herself experiencing something unexpected. The joy surrounding her, the pure, unfiltered happiness of thousands of fans celebrating music they loved, wasn't making her pain worse. Instead, it was creating a strange kind of comfort. Emma would have loved this. Emma would have been one of these screaming, dancing, completely lost in the moment fans. Michael was midway through Billie Jean when it happened. He was executing his famous moonwalk during the song's instrumental break, that gravity-defying glide that had made him a global phenomenon, when something caught his attention in the audience. Years of performing had given Michael an almost supernatural awareness of his audiences. He could sense the energy of a crowd, could identify individual faces even in seas of people, could detect when something was different or wrong or unusual. And Sarah Mitchell was definitely unusual. While everyone around her was on their feet, dancing and singing, Sarah sat perfectly still. Her face was illuminated by the stage lights, and even from the stage Michael could see that she was crying. Not the happy tears that fans sometimes shed during emotional performances, but deep soul-crushing grief that was impossible to mistake. Michael's dancer instincts carried him through the choreography, while his mind focused on this woman. Who was she? Why was she so heartbroken? And why did something about her pain reach across the distance between them and grab hold of his heart? Then Michael noticed something that made his heart skip a beat. Sarah was clutching something to her chest, a photograph, and she kept looking at the empty seat beside her, as if someone should be there but wasn't. In that instant Michael understood. He didn't know the details, but he understood the essential truth. This woman had lost someone who should have been sitting in that empty seat, someone who would have loved to be at this concert. Michael Jackson had dealt with death and loss throughout his life. He'd lost friends, family members, and countless acquaintances to various tragedies. But more than that, he'd spent his entire career trying to bring joy to people who were suffering. His music had always been about transcendence, about creating moments where pain could be temporarily forgotten, and joy could break through even the darkest circumstances. But this moment felt different. This wasn't about entertaining someone for a few hours. This was about witnessing another human being's profound suffering and feeling compelled, no, obligated to respond to it. What Michael did next would shock everyone in Madison Square Garden, including his own band and crew. He stopped dancing mid-moonwalk. He signaled sharply for the music to cut out completely. And he stared directly at Sarah Mitchell with an expression that mixed concern, compassion, and determination. The silence that fell over Madison Square Garden was immediate and absolute. 20,000 people stopped singing, stopped cheering, stopped moving as they tried to understand what was happening. Michael Jackson stood center stage, looking directly at a woman in the third row, while she stared back at him with an expression of confused devastation. The tension lasted for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 15 seconds. Then Michael picked up his microphone and did something that would change Sarah Mitchell's life forever. "Ma'am," Michael said gently, his voice carrying clearly through the silent arena, "I can see you're hurting, and I want you to know that I see you. Whatever pain you're carrying tonight, you're not alone with it." Sarah's hands flew to her mouth as she realized that Michael Jackson, the Michael Jackson, was speaking directly to her in front of 20,000 people. The photograph of Emma slipped from her fingers and fell to the floor. "I don't know your story," Michael continued, his voice filled with genuine compassion, "but I can see that someone very important to you isn't here tonight, someone who should be sitting in that seat next to you." Sarah nodded, unable to speak, tears streaming down her face. The people around her had gone completely silent, some of them reaching out to touch her shoulder in support, all of them recognizing that they were witnessing something extraordinary. "Would you be willing to share with us who you're missing?" Michael asked softly. "You don't have to, if it's too painful. But sometimes speaking their name, honoring their memory in a room full of people who care, can be healing." Sarah stood on shaking legs. A crew member quickly brought her a microphone. Her voice trembled as she spoke, but everyone in the arena heard her clearly. "Her name was Emma," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "She was my daughter. She was 16 years old. These tickets were her birthday present. She loved you so much. She loved your music, your dancing, everything you stood for. But 3 weeks ago, a drunk driver killed her while she was walking home from school." The collective gasp from the audience was audible. Thousands of people experienced a simultaneous punch to the heart as they realized what they were witnessing. Michael's face showed visible pain as he absorbed Sarah's words. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them with renewed purpose. "Emma," Michael repeated, his voice reverent. "What a beautiful name. Sarah, would you tell us more about her? What was she like?" For the next several minutes, something unprecedented happened at a Michael Jackson concert. The show stopped completely, while Sarah Mitchell shared memories of her daughter with 20,000 strangers, who listened with rapt attention and breaking hearts. She told them about Emma's infectious laugh, about how she'd worn out that Thriller VHS tape, about her dreams of becoming a music teacher so she could share her love of music with children, about her kindness, her humor, her passion for life that had been stolen far too soon. Michael listened to every word, visibly moved, occasionally wiping tears from his own eyes. When Sarah finished speaking, he stood silent for a moment, then made a decision that would become legendary. "Sarah," Michael said, "and everyone here tonight, we're going to do something together. We're going to honor Emma's memory in a way that I think would make her smile. We're going to celebrate her love of music, her joy, and her beautiful spirit." Michael signaled to his band, then turned back to the audience. "This song is one that Emma loved very much according to her mom. It's called Man in the Mirror, and it's about making the world a better place, about being the change we want to see. Emma sounds like she was exactly that kind of person, someone who wanted to make the world better through teaching music to children." As the opening notes of Man in the Mirror began, Michael did something he'd never done before in his career. He invited Sarah up onto the stage. Security helped her navigate the stairs, and suddenly Sarah Mitchell, grieving mother from New Jersey, found herself standing on the same stage as Michael Jackson in front of 20,000 people. Michael took her hand gently and spoke to her quietly, words meant only for her. "Your daughter's spirit is here tonight," he said. "I can feel it, and I want you to know that her love of music, her joy, her dreams, none of that dies with her physical body. That lives on in you, in everyone she touched, and in every young person who discovers music and finds the same joy she found." Then Michael did something that would become one of the most iconic moments in concert history. He performed Man in the Mirror, not to the audience, but to Sarah. He sang every word directly to her, maintaining eye contact, letting the message of the song about looking at yourself, about making changes, about healing the world, become a personal message of hope and healing for this grieving mother. But here's where the magic really happened. As Michael sang, something extraordinary began occurring throughout Madison Square Garden. Fans began pulling out lighters and holding them up, the traditional concert gesture of reverence and connection. But they weren't just holding them for Michael. They were holding them for Emma, for Sarah, for every person in that arena who had lost someone they loved. 20,000 tiny flames flickered in the darkness of Madison Square Garden, creating a sea of light that seemed to embody both grief and hope, loss and love, darkness and illumination all at once. Sarah stood on that stage, bathed in the light from those 20,000 flames, listening to Michael Jackson sing about changing the world and starting with the man in the mirror, and something shifted inside her. The unbearable weight of her grief didn't disappear. It would never disappear, but it transformed slightly. It became something she could carry because she knew she wasn't carrying it alone. When the song ended, Michael embraced Sarah in a long, genuine hug that felt like a father comforting a daughter or a friend supporting a friend through impossible pain. The audience erupted in sustained applause that went on for nearly 5 minutes, but Michael wasn't finished. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "tonight we've been reminded of something crucial. Music isn't just entertainment, it's connection, it's healing. It's a way we honor those we've lost and celebrate the lives they lived." Emma Mitchell loved music, and her spirit is alive in every note we play and every song we sing. Michael then announced that he would be establishing a scholarship fund in Emma's name at the Juilliard School, providing full tuition for music education students who shared Emma's dream of becoming music teachers. Furthermore, he pledged to donate the proceeds from that night's concert to organizations fighting drunk driving, the senseless tragedy that had taken Emma's life. The aftermath of that November night at Madison Square Garden extended far beyond the arena walls, creating ripples of change that would affect thousands of lives in ways both large and small. Sarah Mitchell, who had arrived at the concert drowning in grief and questioning whether she wanted to continue living in a world without her daughter, left with something she hadn't felt in 3 weeks: hope. Not hope that the pain would disappear, she knew it wouldn't, but hope that she could find meaning in Emma's memory and purpose in her grief. Within days of the concert, the video footage captured by fans' cameras and later released officially by Michael's team spread across the world. This was 1988, before the internet, before viral videos, but the footage appeared on every major news program, was discussed on talk shows, and became a defining moment in popular culture's understanding of what it meant to use celebrity and platform for genuine human connection. The Emma Mitchell Memorial Scholarship Fund, established by Michael Jackson, grew beyond anyone's expectations. Within the first year, it had raised over $2 million, providing full scholarships to 25 aspiring music teachers. Over the following decades, the fund would support hundreds of educators who went on to inspire countless students, creating a ripple effect of Emma's love for music that extended far beyond what her own lifetime would have allowed. But perhaps the most profound impact was on how people thought about grief, loss, and healing. Sarah Mitchell became an advocate for families affected by drunk driving, sharing her story and that magical Madison Square Garden night as evidence that even in our darkest moments, human connection and compassion can provide light. Michael Jackson himself was deeply changed by the experience. Friends and colleagues noted that after that night, he became even more intentional about connecting with audiences on a personal level, about looking for opportunities to transform concerts from mere performances into experiences of genuine human connection. "That night taught me something I'd forgotten," Michael said in a 1989 interview with Oprah Winfrey. "Music is a gift we're meant to share, but compassion, truly seeing another person's pain and responding to it, that's an even greater gift." Emma Mitchell never got to attend my concert, but in some way, she attended through her mother, and in honoring Emma's memory, we all learned what it means to truly see each other. The story resonated particularly powerfully with people who had experienced similar losses. In the months following the concert, Michael's management received thousands of letters from people who had lost children, parents, siblings, and friends. Many of them shared that watching the footage of that night had helped them process their own grief, had reminded them that their loved ones' memories could be honored in beautiful ways, and that they weren't alone in their suffering. Emma Mitchell's younger sister, Rachel, who was only 8 years old when Emma died, later spoke about how that concert became a turning point for her entire family. "Before that night, we were drowning," Rachel said in a 2010 interview. "My mom could barely function. My dad had shut down completely. I was having nightmares every night. But after Michael honored Emma like that, something changed. It was like he gave us permission to celebrate Emma's life, instead of just mourning her death. He showed us that grief and joy could coexist, that we could miss her desperately, while also honoring everything beautiful about who she was." The impact extended into Michael's own charitable work. Inspired by Sarah and Emma's story, he expanded his efforts to support families affected by drunk driving, by violence, by illness, and by all forms of tragedy that struck children. The Heal the World Foundation, which he founded in 1992, specifically included provisions for supporting families through grief. Music educators began using the Emma Mitchell story as a teaching tool, discussing with students the power of music to heal, to connect, and to transcend even death itself. The story became part of music education curricula, particularly in programs focused on the social and emotional aspects of music. Sarah Mitchell remained in touch with Michael throughout his life, their connection forged in that moment of shared grief and compassion, never truly fading. When Michael faced his own struggles with media scrutiny and personal challenges, Sarah was among those who publicly defended him, speaking about the genuine kindness and compassion she had witnessed firsthand. The world saw Michael as a performer, as a celebrity, as someone whose life was so different from theirs that he couldn't possibly relate to ordinary human suffering, Sarah said. But I saw a man who stopped his own concert, something he had worked on for months, something that was costing thousands of dollars per minute, because he saw a stranger in pain and couldn't continue performing until he had tried to help. That's not celebrity, that's humanity at its finest. The 20,000 people who were present at Madison Square Garden that night never forgot what they witnessed. Many of them described it as the most meaningful concert experience of their lives, not because of Michael's incredible performance skills, though those were on full display, but because they had witnessed genuine compassion and human connection transcend the usual barriers between performer and audience. Fan forums and discussion groups that emerged in later decades with the rise of the internet consistently ranked that Madison Square Garden show as one of the most emotionally powerful concerts in history. People who had been there shared their memories, describing the feeling in the arena when those 20,000 lighters flickered to life, the collective holding of breath when Sarah shared Emma's story, the sense of being part of something larger than themselves. The drunk driver who killed Emma Mitchell, a 32-year-old man named Robert Chen, was serving a 15-year prison sentence when he learned about what had happened at the concert. Through his attorney, he requested to write a letter to Sarah Mitchell, a letter in which he expressed not just apology, but recognition of the full magnitude of what he had taken from the world. "I didn't just kill your daughter," he wrote. "I killed the teacher she would have become. I killed the students she would have inspired. I killed the music she would have brought into the world." What Michael Jackson did, honoring her memory, establishing that scholarship, showing everyone what Emma meant, that showed me the true cost of what I did. I didn't just end a life, I ended all the lives that life would have touched. Sarah eventually agreed to meet with Robert Chen as part of a restorative justice program. The meeting was painful and difficult, but Sarah later said it was an important step in her healing process. She shared that Michael's example of responding to pain with compassion rather than anger had given her a model for how to approach even the person responsible for her daughter's death. The Emma Mitchell Memorial Scholarship has now supported over 300 music educators, who collectively have taught tens of thousands of students. Several of those teachers specifically focus on using music therapy and education to help children process grief and trauma, directly inspired by the story of how Emma's memory was honored. When Michael Jackson died in 2009, Sarah Mitchell was among the thousands who traveled to Los Angeles for the memorial service. She brought with her a photograph, the same photograph of Emma that she had been clutching that night at Madison Square Garden 21 years earlier. At the memorial, Sarah shared a brief statement that was included in the official tribute video. "Michael Jackson changed my life on the worst night I could imagine. When I walked into Madison Square Garden, I wanted to die. I couldn't see any reason to continue living in a world without my daughter. But Michael saw my pain, acknowledged it, honored Emma's memory, and showed me that even in the darkest grief, there is still connection, still meaning, still purpose. He saved my life that night, and through the scholarship fund, he ensured that Emma's love of music would continue to ripple out into the world long after both of them were gone." The tribute was watched by millions of people around the world, many of whom were learning about the Madison Square Garden story for the first time. The footage from that 1988 concert experienced a resurgence, with millions of views on newly popular video-sharing platforms. A new generation discovered not just Michael's incredible talent, but his capacity for genuine compassion. Today there is a plaque at Madison Square Garden commemorating that November 14, 1988 concert. It doesn't mention Michael's legendary performance or his incredible dance moves or the spectacular production. Instead it reads, "On this stage, Michael Jackson taught us that the greatest performances aren't always the ones that showcase the most talent. Sometimes, They're the ones that showcase the most humanity. In memory of Emma Mitchell, 1972-1988, and in honor of all those who use their platforms to heal rather than merely entertain. Rachel Mitchell, Emma's younger sister, followed in her sister's footsteps and became a music teacher. She now directs a program for at-risk youth in New Jersey, using music education to help children process trauma and find hope. On her office wall hangs a framed photograph from that night at Madison Square Garden, her mother on stage with Michael Jackson, 20,000 lights flickering in the darkness. Emma's life was cut short, Rachel says to her students, but her impact wasn't. One act of compassion, Michael seeing my mother's pain and choosing to respond to it, created ripples that are still spreading today. Every song you learn, every student you inspire when you become teachers yourselves, every moment of healing that music provides, that's all part of Emma's legacy. That's what happens when we choose compassion over indifference. The story of that Madison Square Garden concert serves as a permanent reminder that our greatest moments of humanity often come not when everything is going according to plan, but when we're willing to stop, to truly see another person's pain, and to respond with genuine compassion, even when it's inconvenient, even when it disrupts our plans, even when it costs us something. Michael Jackson could have continued his concert. He could have let security quietly handle the situation. He could have acknowledged Sarah with a brief gesture and moved on with the show. Instead, he chose to stop everything, to put 20,000 paying fans on hold because one person was suffering and he couldn't in good conscience continue performing while ignoring that suffering. That choice cost him nothing in terms of his career or reputation. In fact, it enhanced both, but more importantly, it saved a life, inspired thousands of others, and created a legacy of compassion that continues to ripple outward more than 3 decades later. Sarah Mitchell is now 73 years old. She still has that same photograph of Emma that she clutched at the concert. But now, next to it, she keeps a photograph from that night, her standing on stage with Michael, surrounded by a sea of flickering lights. People ask me if the pain ever goes away, Sarah says. It doesn't. I still miss Emma every single day. But what Michael taught me that night is that grief and joy aren't opposites. They coexist. I can miss my daughter desperately while also celebrating the beautiful ripples her life and her death created. I can hurt while also feeling grateful. I can grieve while also hoping. Music saved my life that night, Sarah continues, her voice steady. But more than that, compassion saved my life. The willingness of one person to see another person's pain and respond to it, that's what saved me. And that's what Emma would have wanted. She always said music was about connection. Michael proved her right.